all want to make money by doing something we love. If you could turn your hobby into your job, you'd never work a day in your life, right? Welcome to Hobby Hustle, the ultimate podcast where collecting passion and business collide. Now, here's your host, Zach Nigett.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 14 of Hobby Hustle. I hope everyone is doing well, and I'm really glad that you're here with us today. I'm your host, Zach Nigett, and I appreciate you taking time to spend with us. If you've been enjoying the pod, please be sure to like, subscribe, rate us, and of course, share with your friends. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to leave a comment and share any thoughts, suggestions, or ideas that you have for future episodes. I really appreciate your support, and I hope you enjoy the show. Today's guest has been in the hobby professionally for over 20 years. Her career has been built on an impressive collection of modern sports and memorabilia focused on hot prospects and long-term investment pieces. She's a pioneer in the hobby as one of the first women to be a regular dealer traveling the country to set up at trade shows. Her reputation in the hobby community has allowed her to establish a network of local New York-based clients as well as other buyers around the world. She's been able to take her success on the road as a dealer and turn it into a physical shop and showroom in the New York area. You can find her on social at Black Jaded Wolf or her website, blackjadedwolf.com. I'm honored to welcome a friend, passionate collector, and pioneer for women in the hobby, Sharon Choing, to the show. Sharon, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invite, Zach.
Yeah, how are you today?
I'm good, running around, but doing some work. Supposed to be my day off, but Monday's always my day off, but there's no day off in this job, so.
That's right. It's a 24/7 grind, right?
Exactly.
Nice. So, hey, I'm curious, in a crowded world of sports-themed business names, Black Jaded Wolf sort of stands out. So can you tell us how that name came to be?
This like one of the top question I get asked, and it's kind of boring answer, but it's I give it to tribute to Google, basically. They asked
Okay.
for my favorites, color, stone, and basically animal, and you came up with Black Jaded Wolf, basically.
There you go. Well, it's good. And like I said, it's unique and your logo's unique. So Google helped you out well, I guess, right?
Yeah, and then it sounded great, and and I believe in branding. That's like my number one thing, and I just kind of ran with it, basically.
That's awesome. Well, you've done a good job with it for sure. So with all my guests, I like to sort of take it back to the very beginning from a collecting perspective and learn more about how you first got into collecting and sort of what those early memories were for you.
I love sports. When I was going home from school before, this is like probably high school, maybe even a little earlier, and the corner store always have like some packs, and I don't want to age myself, but I grew up in the Jordan era that
Totally.
just love Jordan and Pippen, the Bulls and all that stuff.
Those are my guys. So we're on the same
Yes.
page.
Okay. So with that, I opened a lot of like Skybox, Flair and all that stuff, and EX, credentials. Those are my favorite stuff. And it just went from there. I started opening, and next thing you know, I fell in love with the hobby. Just my first job, I think for the first couple of years when I was still living with my parents in college, my whole salary goes to opening wax, basically.
Awesome. Well, I don't know if that's awesome, but it's really cool. I'm
Well,
sure it's fun.
well, well, okay, so let me finish with that so I could
Yeah.
make it awesome.
Yeah.
So I was in college at that time, and after a few years, I'm like, what am I gonna do with these sports cards?
Yeah.
So I used Google and then found a couple local shows and stuff like that. I met a guy, he's a local dealer, and decided, you know what? So you could maximize. Why don't you I'll give you one of my spot. And next thing you know, after 10, 20 years, he's been out the business, and I've taken a big spot.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Mm.
So speaking of those early days, you're ripping, Skybox,
Mhm.
whatever sort of basketball. Can you talk to us a little bit about
Mhm.
how your collections evolved over the years? Because you have some pretty high-end stuff these days.
Okay, with that said, I took my collection and turned it into kind of like a full-time job.
Okay.
My parents weren't very happy with that because they paid for college, but
Yeah.
uh, I fulfilled my duty as a student, graduated, but first thing I did was turn this into a full-time job. So basically, I collected modern autograph. That's what I fell in love with. So I moved almost all my collection and kept like maybe a couple of pieces.
Hmm.
And then next thing you know, I try to be, I study a lot. I study the hobby, it wasn't just like opening wax now. Now I need to turn it into a business and not just, gambling basically.
Yeah.
So, I studied like look at the show. Everybody has vintage. Nobody has modern, set up. So I turned into my first niche was Bowman Chrome.
Okay.
I opened a lot of Bowman Chrome, open cases, and then autograph. And next thing you know, after a few years, everybody's doing Bowman Chrome.
Yeah.
And then I start evolving into basketball. And then the Asian market caught fire too. They're all collecting Jordan, Kobe insert in the 90s.
Hmm.
And then so I focus on that, move a little away from baseball, basically. And, so in the first 10 years, I couldn't really keep a lot of stuff. I treated it as trying to grow my business, basically.
Okay.
Trying to buy, resell, buy, resell. Next thing you know, it got to like maybe the past before pandemic, and I could hold some stuff starting like maybe 7, 8 years ago.
Okay.
So I bought some stuff and held on to it. Luckily, a lot of people sold all their collection before pandemic because they're all worried. But with that said, I kind of got lucky. Some of the pieces, the timing was right. I held on to some of the right pieces, basically.
Yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
a couple favorites you could maybe tell us about?
Obviously, Jordan.
Yeah.
I still have a couple of like Jordan sneaker. I think one of his first sneaker card that came out, SPX.
Yeah. Cool.
I still have that card with me. It's almost like a long time, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and obviously, what you showcased it. Jeff have showcased the card. I still have the black gold Luca.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I didn't held on to, which I probably should have, is my exquisite LeBrons.
Well, hindsight's always 2020. I think every collector probably has
Yeah,
a piece or two that they wish they would have held on to longer, but it is what it is. We
exactly.
make the decisions and move on when we need to, right?
No, that's number one. People always ask me that. Once I sell a piece, I don't care if it becomes a million the next day. I moved on from it because I treated it as a salary. If I couldn't have grown my collection or my business if I didn't move some of those bigger pieces. So
I think that's really good perspective because I think a lot of people get hung up on that. And I think that to
yeah.
your point, like, hey, I made my money or I lost my money, but like that
Mhm.
is done. I'm compartmentalizing it, moving on and on to
Yeah,
the next thing, right?
you have to. And I always tell people you just got to be 70 to 80% right. I know it's a high number to some people, but
Yeah.
if you hedge it right, it's not as hard as people think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
totally. Very cool. Well, so I know you mentioned that you had sort of started to befriend this gentleman and set up his shows with him and stuff, but could you sort of take us back to how you got into the collectible space professionally a little bit and tell us more about that?
I started getting my own table and basically knowing that I want to get into the baseball market, I studied a lot of box score each night. So I became a night owl because of that. I literally probably wake up or do most of my work at 10 to like maybe 2 a.m.
Oh, wow. Okay.
because all the box score ends around that time.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about covering minor league, triple A, double A, single A, reading all subscribing to all the emails and how the box score does. And then October is the busiest month because there's hockey, football, basketball, and baseball.
Yeah.
So to me, and I did all that, and that's the thing. I was blessed with getting kind of having a photographic memory. And I skimmed through whatever data that I know was important. And it took me years to kind of figure out what sells. It's not just box score.
Right.
You got to kind of analyze it, what stats are important in the hobby, and not
Mhm.
just somebody having a double hitter might not be as successful as a home run hitter. So,
Yeah.
and a player that strikes out a lot might not be successful. So those type of stuff, you gotta kind of study and then also try to be different from others. I don't like to blend in and just be the same. Everybody's selling base prism. No, I don't want that. So I started to move into the higher end market because you could kind of, if you know what you're doing and you know how to predict prices and stuff like that, it's more fun. I could have gotten into vintage. So many people kind of ask me, oh, it's safer. Yes, it is safer, but it's
Mhm.
also what I'm happy doing. I always tell people, what are you happy collecting? I love seeing an athlete grow, and I could kind of have a small piece of investment and follow that athlete,
Yeah.
and not just see the money, but kind of, enjoy it, enjoy watching this athlete perform, and to be connected to the sports, basically.
Yeah. That's interesting. You mentioned like moving more into the high end market, not being scared, if you can
Mhm.
predict it. Like, can you obviously you said, you're following the box scores and you're sort of understanding what stats matter. Obviously the home run hitter brings the headlines, that probably drives prices. But how have you sort of seen that correlation? And can you sort of give me a little bit more information in regards to how you identify these people, right?
So let's I don't know if I want to continue with that, because baseball is kind of slowed down, but the perfect stats now is football.
Yeah.
So football is kind of fun. 10 years ago, nobody collects football because such a high risk because of
Mhm.
injury and stuff like that.
Yep.
But recently, it's not just having a good quarterback that has a lot of talent, like Herbert has the
Mhm.
greatest talent, but also has been unlucky the last couple of years. All his wide receivers. So you got to study his team, his injury. I study strength of schedule is like so important to my investment. So it's like Dak. I love Dak if he has a strong line, but but I kind of let go of all my Dak stuff when his line got worse. So
Yeah.
those are important. So when Jeff a few years ago came in the city to visit my shop, I told him Jalen Hurts before Jalen Hurts got a little crazy. Jalen Hurts have like probably top two of the weakest schedule that year. He has the talent, but he's also not there yet. And even right now, you could see he's not in the top five conversation. So
Mhm.
it's not just the talent or the skill, it's more like the overall stats, overall team what do you call it?
The
Intangibles. There's a
camaraderie,
lot
the
of
makeup of the team, like how yeah,
yes.
yeah,
So you gotta study basically. It's like building a fantasy team.
yep,
So those are how I study and how I invest, basically.
okay,
It's not just, it's like golf I like this year, but I like golf for 2 years.
yep, totally.
So,
I get it. I get it.
mhm.
And then how did you make that jump from dealing with probably, not like low end, like dollar cards necessarily, but from, probably hundreds into thousands into tens of thousands? Like, what has that sort of jump been like for you, from a dealer perspective?
I always tell people I can't rush it. I understand you could flip and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
I don't like to flip my stuff. I like to hold on a little. But I'm also very patient. I'm kind of like a poker player in a tournament that, when your pot is getting built bigger, then you could take more risks, basically.
Sure.
So
Yep.
that's what I did. So when I was younger, my pot is small, so
Yeah.
I couldn't take risks, but I did a lot of small bet that I know I could win, basically.
Okay.
And now my pot is a little bit bigger. Now you could take some risks that, but calculated risks, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm,
totally. That's awesome. And I think that's
mhm,
good advice. My son and my nephew are really getting
mhm.
into it and they're very interested in the margins and everything like that. So to
Yeah.
your point, when you got that smaller pot, you got to try to play the little brick by brick strategy, right? It can't
Yes.
all at once.
Mhm. Yeah, it's I mean, with the higher prices, it's like there's good and bad. If you get lucky with one guy that you really collected,
Mhm.
it could catapult you to one of the top. Your pot could get bigger right away.
Sure.
But you could also lose bad, and now your collection. A lot of people did leave because of that. After the pandemic.
Yep. Yep.
So just
Totally.
gotta hedge a little and kind of diversify the portfolio a little.
Yep, yep.
Mhm.
So you've been able to transition a little bit from being a dealer at all these shows into starting to have a physical shop. Can you sort of tell us a little bit about what that transition's like and how you're going about that?
Yeah, it's not. I love doing shows. You know that.
Yeah.
The last few years, I think the last 2 years ago, I did like 36 show in 52 weekends.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a lot. It was a grind. I basically don't even unpack. Do laundry and then go back
Yeah.
out. And then it got to a point that the market has kind of forced me to. Because, you go to a show, I like to do shows that I could sell and I could also buy.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, you're not relying on just selling, you're relying on both. You could
Yep.
cover the expenses and you could also grow your inventory if you could do both. But
Mhm.
if you just go to a show and sell there, to me, it's not worth it for me. So basically, I like to be transparent. I use name of shows. Dallas is like one of the one show in the country right now.
Mhm.
Besides nationals.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like the monthly shows, every other month shows. But it got to a point that there's a lot of just lower end sale, repack and all that stuff. And I did that. I worked with everything you could think of in this industry.
Sure.
And but it got to a point that, I don't need to just go there to sell to those people. But if I can't buy there, it's just not worth it for me. So now I'm trying to find ways to basically, well, how could I buy? Where
Mhm.
could I buy? So I decided, maybe let's try some stores. Opening physical stores could be a new way of doing it. Not new, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There
New
are
for you.
stores, yes, new for
Yeah.
me, because
Yeah.
I kind of have a brand already.
Yep.
So if I tell people, oh, my store is gonna be having monthly buying, I'll have like a buying area, that type of thing. Hopefully it brings some new purchases and stuff like that. But the stores I'm opening also are combination of drop off center for PSA. My relationship with PSA for almost 15 years, and I'm always trying finding new ways to improve and kind of not just a local small, shop, kind of like Card HQ. They're changing what a card shop is.
Yeah.
So I want to learn from that, and also if we could add it, what's the next future card shop looks like.
Sure. Totally.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's really cool. And you bring up, obviously
Mhm.
that you are a grading service as well, or submission for grading.
Yep.
But you also do consignments, correct?
I am trying. So I'm in a point like, do I want to do that or do I not want to do that?
Yeah.
So, like I said, people need to assess when, I like to be mobile basically. If
Hmm.
I see that the consignment business might be hedging in a direction that I'm not secure about, I might not move into that.
Okay.
Because to me, I don't know if you noticed recently with PSA, Vault, and running their own auctions now, I actually think if I'm a consumer, I would do that too. I would use their service because they get a lot of eyeballs. I'm still grading, but I have an option to kind of just give it to them and run. Why run it yourself? You know what I
Sure.
mean? And build
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So if it's a way that I could just take in orders, so basically, with that said, I'm making a pause on the consignment part, possibly.
Okay, got it. Well, it's cool
Mhm.
that you're constantly evolving and you're sort of seeing these
Mhm.
market trends and being able to react to whatever those market trends are.
Mhm.
I guess what are you sort of seeing? Obviously, we're in football season, so football's gonna be hot, but sort of
Yep.
larger scale, what are some of the market trends that you see currently, and where do you think, some of those go in the next year or so?
I'm very happy with the market right now. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've been doing this for, like you said, 20 something years, but
Yep.
national this year was very positive for me because it's not just selling to wholesale. There's a lot of retail consumer,
Mhm.
father and son, so many father and son and families where they're shopping together. It's one of my most successful national this year.
Awesome, congrats.
Yeah, and with buying too and stuff like that. And then with Fanatics getting into the scene too, and I think they're gonna change, what card show will be in the next few years too. So
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a chance to be at Fanatics Fest, but I heard nothing but
Mhm.
great things about it. And then I know
Yeah,
that they have an upcoming show in November in Orlando that'll be more card show focused.
yeah,
But to your point, like they're definitely working to sort of elevate that whole experience.
yeah. And their goal is to kind of work with the dealers. They're bringing in the people. Obviously, they're bringing in new people that don't know about the hobby.
Hmm.
Uh, so they're trying to open eyes and kind of bridge those gap between the people that goes to stadium just to watch the games
Sure.
and the gambling part too, sports betting and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So with that said, that's why Fanatics was a lot of people, but there you could see that there's a lot of questions about what are this, that's like the number one question.
Yep.
And I feel like we all the dealers and Fanatics will have to grow together, to make some sacrifice and I think that's why I'm happy with where it's going right
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I do think it's important to
now.
obviously have those relationships, and Fanatics as a brand needs the dealers.
Mhm.
They need the fans, right, to all
Yep.
come together. So I think, yeah, as you mentioned, that'll just evolve sort of over time. I guess, speaking of you saying fathers and sons, you're saying new
Mhm.
people are coming in.
Yeah.
What do you see like from a price standpoint? Like, are you able to move those high end cards still, or is it really starting to focus more on like that? We'll call it mid tier, the 50 to $500 type of cards.
So that's the funny part. I was actually kind of concerned about that.
Yeah.
But what I sold was pretty much from 2,000 to probably upward of like 10, 20,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, even a few like maybe 30 to $40,000 cards. So there were people that are so I feel like the people that stayed from the pandemic, the newer people,
Mhm.
in before they could buy one NT card of Trevor Lawrence for 20,000,
Mhm.
Anthony Edward for 60, 70,000. But now they could buy 5, 6 guys. Because now NT, like Brock Purdy, is one of the most positive, rookie last year.
Yeah.
And his NT is only like 10,000. So you could buy like 5 guys now in 50,000 instead of just buying, one guy that you could lose. That's remember we talked about that.
Yeah.
So I think it's more fun now for people to kind of okay, this is safe. It's not as bad as before because if you could gamble on 5 guys that could, if 2 guys pan out, you're not breaking, you're breaking even basically.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so so it's more fun again, and I feel like those father and son are enjoying it. But there's also a lot, I sold a lot of non-sport during national, which was very shocking to me. There was one whole family buying non-sport. So that was fun, and those are like my favorite stuff too, my new favorite stuff. So.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit. When you say non-sport, some people in the audience might not understand that. So could you tell us what types of stuff that is that you're selling that are non-sport?
Okay. So non-sport, could be TCG like Pokemon. For
Mhm.
stores, those are like probably if you ask any store owner, that's like the number one moving thing right now in their store. But to me, I'm also talking about non-sport autograph like Batman, Ben Affleck, Spider-Man, a lot of like TV show you grow up watching or movies, and now they have autograph version of those cards. And
Mhm.
I know Topps just I think start working with Marvel and Disney to start building that brand too. So
Yep.
mhm.
Yeah, it's fascinating how that part and segment of the market is just exploding, that like
Mhm.
pop culture, music, movies,
Yeah.
cartoons, you sort of name it, people are having a desire to get that. That's really cool. And as people put money into this, you've talked about a couple times, you mentioned it, it's an investment for people too,
Yeah.
right? It's not just buying what they love or like for fun of it when you're talking those dollars. So I know part of your business model or sort of what you're known for is to help people identify those. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you approach your clients from the investment aspect of it?
So I know some people don't like it that I say that, oh, it's a hobby, it's a collectible, you shouldn't think about the monetary value. But
Sure.
if we could teach our kids to kind of, you know, it's like, we teaching our kids to take care of the cards. That's the same way as investing or choosing a player wisely.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, it's just about, oh, you want to buy this so we could flip it next week. No, I'm talking about like, if you want to buy a card, like think of it like, is it a smart choice?
Yeah.
It's like you buy Zach Wilson a few years ago and knowing that he's so erratic and not a good team player might
Yep.
not be a good investment. So, it's like, and I like to also teach the younger player or people to kind of how to invest and what are the right thing to do it. And the end of the day, people always ask me, oh, who do you like to invest? I said, who's your favorite player? And then, you kind of help them through the process. I'm giving you this scale. These are the good stuff. These are the bad stuff. You decide yourself. I'm
Mhm.
not going to tell you what to buy. I'm going to tell you what you like, and then these are the good and bad, and then you will decide.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, sort of line them up for success without telling them, right?
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you know what? They're not gonna blame you, if they make a mistake. Because at the end of the day, these are the stats, and that's how I chose. So that's how I got better because I'm not, you know, just taking people's advice. I'm actually studying it, I'm weighing it myself, and then I'm making the decision. So, it's like you're teaching your kid. It's like, oh, okay, so you have $100, budget. Is this the card and why? You tell me why this is the guy to buy. It's like having a conversation. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Totally. No, no,
Mhm,
I agree with you. And you've
mhm.
obviously done really well for yourself and had success picking some of the right players, which is awesome. I guess, not just picking players, but as a whole, you've been super successful and a pioneer in this space, being a woman, in a very male
Mhm.
dominated space. What are some of the things that you attribute your success to?
Relationship with people is so important to me,
Yeah.
transparent. I understand there are people's like, oh, Sharon are expensive sometimes, certain things, because I kind of know, like, oh, if I like a kid, there's a reason why I like a kid. I'm not just gonna give him up cheap,
Sure.
but I'm still giving you a room that I know this kid in 6 months, if you hold on to it, you're gonna make money, unless they get injured. That's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so it's like my relationship. I have relationship with people, my customer that are like 20 years and they're still my friend,
Mhm.
I like it that they'll invite me to their barbecue, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Eh, yeah, and then their wife will tell me, "Oh my god, I'm so glad, you take the stress out from my husband because he's a stockbroker and this is, that type of thing." So it's like the relationship, the people I meet is like so important.
Yeah. No, I think that's,
Mhm.
another great piece of advice right there is just building those relationships, and so much of this hobby goes to that. And obviously you can build those relationships online, but also
Yeah.
putting yourself out there because you travel so much, those face-to-face relationships, conversations are so important in this hobby.
Actually, my favorite thing in shows is actually probably one thing I'm gonna miss the most if I do stop is every show I try to at the end of the show, I try to have dinner with people, some of the friends that I haven't seen. And every day I choose different people. So it's not just like you're hanging out with the same people.
Yeah.
And the same goes if you're a store owner, you build relationship with your customer. You don't
Mhm.
want to jack up your price. So, you want the kid to be proud and come back and tell you, oh, I bought this and now it's worth this.
Yeah.
It's like those type of story I love, hearing basically.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's very cool. Obviously not all this has been a smooth ride for you, right? There's some ups and there's some downs. So could you maybe talk to us about some of the challenges that you faced
Mhm.
and how you've overcome those?
I don't dwell on negatives.
Okay.
So to me, I kind of put it aside. So one thing, people always ask me why I'm not as, you know, active in social media.
Mhm.
I've been wanting to start a podcast, and I told you about this because
Yeah,
I've been asking for your advice.
yeah,
Because I like to have a voice, but I also like to have a positive voice. Because I feel like a lot of the clicks or are negatives,
mhm,
and that's the reason why my hesitation in dwelling in this platform. So to me, it's like I think the negatives basically. I always tell my friends, the women's sports is just starting to grow. Just remember this year to probably 5 years from now, it's gonna be so different.
yeah,
And I love where it's going, and companies are starting to actually put money in there and investing in it, and I feel like some stores or breaks are still not like I'm not comfortable going to a chat sometimes when people are breaking
sure,
WNBA stuff because
mhm,
the negatives and male dominated, and I feel like the breakers are not controlling the chats or not saying anything and they're jumping into, the negatives basically. So
yeah,
that's my main struggle is like we want to be all inclusive, but we're not doing the action. And it's hard to preach because, it's still, like I said, 99%, male dominated.
yeah,
I mean, Stephanie Garcia, Mama Breaks is doing a great job.
yeah,
Leighton is doing a great job because they're hiring a lot of female breakers now too. And I feel like a lot of people are starting to do that, which is great. And
totally,
I feel like that's one way of controlling your room.
Yeah.
And we also, breakers also can't be afraid of losing, a big person that will spend money because, but if they're rude and,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we need to be a little bit more acceptance when it comes to that and open. If we could say it and you say, oh, you want to hire a woman, then do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, to your point, yourself, Stephanie, there's so many others. Laura Don Diego,
Yes,
has become
exactly.
really a big deal.
Hmm.
There's some of the other ladies in the Pokemon community that are really coming to the forefront, both here in the States as well as internationally,
Yep.
overseas, up in Canada.
Yep.
That's really cool to see. And then to your point, just women's sports as a whole. I mean, I agree with you. I think that we're in a moment right now, and I can't speak to all women's sports because I'm not as well versed, but WNBA specifically,
Yep.
with obviously Caitlin Clark coming in
Yep.
and Angel Reese, and some of these other amazing young women that are coming into the sport. Like, I sort of feel like it's that, Magic, Bird, Jordan, where you're stacking these personalities and these amazing talents, and it's really starting to blossom, and you're starting to see that
Yeah.
it's becoming more mainstream.
I look at it as this Angel Reese and Caitlyn situation. It's more like they're like the Jordans,
Yeah,
because I thought that the Birds and the Kareem are already there.
yeah,
To me,
fair.
there are greats that have passed already, but never really got, the name out. It's like
Mhm,
Taurasi is one of my favorite player, and I
mhm.
think he's probably one of the best. But but the game has changed. Before people says, "Oh, WNBA is boring," but Steph has changed that. Kids now wants to shoot 3-point, so now it makes Caitlin Ionescu relevant because
Yeah,
we want to shoot threes. It's
yeah,
not, we're not relying on dunks anymore. Obviously, less female dunks.
right.
So, but now it's changing. It's fun. It's exciting. Some stadiums are selling out, and all that stuff. So I feel like it's getting there, and there's no negative. It's more like it has to happen, basically, because there's always new people. Anytime you have something growing, there's always new opinions, and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
good and bad, it's their opinions. So
Sure. Yeah, yeah, totally.
mhm.
So speaking of growing and opinions,
Mhm.
you're based in New York in the East Coast, and that is a very large city with a lot of opinions. I guess talk to me a little bit about what that collecting scene is like, and has that been sort of a positive or maybe a negative for you?
Negative just because it's kind of high rent and super
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
No, it's definitely not cheap. You've never heard of stores opening at like $15,000 monthly rent and, surviving.
Yeah,
So, but it's growing. A lot of bigger brand name are opening in the city now and stuff like that. And but the good part is also I think there are some truly big customer in New York,
sure.
big investor that don't go to shows even because there's just not a lot of, you know, bigger shows and they don't travel. Some of the bigger customer are not, don't go to shows, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
So it's just, but finding a big store, they might be more open to come by. So hopefully, I think that's one of, working with Fanatics. And I think that's one of their goal too, to kind of lure some of like Ruben said, New York is like the hub. There's no way. Why is there no big shows? No, there are shows here. I'm not saying, but
Right.
it's different than, why nationals never in the city
Yeah.
because of the expenses. I'm gonna be
Right.
honest with you.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
be
totally.
honest. Hmm. And not every promoter could run a show in the city, and not every dealer want to pay that much to set up in the city. Hotels are 2 times what regular is.
Mhm.
So with that said, I think it's slowly changing, but I know Burbank says, West Coast is the king, but I don't know. I think East Coast, if people try to come to, if there is a big show, East Coast could put up a big fight.
There you go. No, I like that. Well, so let's talk about that for 1 second though, and I'm not looking to pair the East Coast against the West Coast,
No,
but
no, no, no,
you
no, no.
have a ton of experience in the hobby, and you've traveled the country and experienced.
Mhm.
So I'm curious to get your sort of views on the East Coast versus West Coast mentality and collecting styles. Have you noticed anything specific there?
Yeah, if you come to a lot of East Coast shows, is 80% more dominant in vintage cards.
Okay.
So a lot of the bigger collector and dealers of vintage are in the East Coast.
Mhm.
So West Coast are more basketball, current, higher end dominant. So that's, when I go to a West Coast show, I know I'm gonna bring some Kobe's and some big autographed Jordans,
Sure.
while going to East Coast, you might probably need to focus a little on like the Phillies, the Red Sox. It's like old mentality, the vintage stuff.
Yeah.
I don't do that, but you could, so some West Coast dealers would come in like, oh, this is disappointing, because you don't see a lot of like higher end basketball stuff here. But there's a lot of big vintage here.
Yeah.
So vintage is a growing market and it's safe. There are people, if you're a new collector and you want to buy some good stuff, I think vintage is, kind of the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, vintage traditionally has been slow and steady, right? Whereas the
Hmm.
modern stuff, you can have the huge spikes and hit the home run. You can also have the huge losses and lose a
Yep.
lot. So like you said,
Yep.
just gotta be careful. And like investing of any sort, right? You need
Yep.
to figure out what your personal tolerance is and then
Yeah.
be able to go from there.
Exactly. It's like, do you want your mutual funds or
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's actually,
Mhm.
yeah, vintage is sort of the mutual funds, right? And then
Yeah.
modern is the hot pick tech
Yep.
stocks.
Definitely. AI.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Mhm.
cool. Well, speaking of
Mhm.
sort of trends in the future, can you talk to us about sort of what are some of your goals for Black Jaded Wolf over the next 12 months, 2 years?
We just like I kind of posted it. We just opened a store in Long Island.
Congrats.
It's managed by Frank Kanza, which is one of the guy that I've been trying to get him to work with me, and we finally did. I
Nice.
trust him a lot, so he's
Yeah.
running the show in Long Island. And now my second goal is probably finding a second location. This one is more like a flagship store, probably somewhere either in Jersey or I'm not sure New York because there's just too much going on in New York.
Yeah.
Probably in Jersey, and I don't want to give anything hints away yet, but
Totally. No,
I'm looking for a nice spot in Jersey. So.
that's awesome. And
Mhm.
congrats on the new store. That's really good. Have you I know it's just been a couple weeks, but how's that been going for you?
So the store is a combo of a store and a PSA drop off center.
Okay.
So half of the store is a small storefront for the town. But and we support a lot of like the baseball team and football team. Hopefully we could grow and have like some sort of kids stuff, every other month or something.
Mhm.
And the other side is more like PSA hand submission center and stuff like that. It's going well, but we're like every store, you gotta put your time and effort. Social media is
Yeah.
big, there's no rush, it's something that we're building. So
That's awesome.
mm,
Well, I wish you the best with that. That's really cool.
thank you.
And I think that your journey has been so cool from like you said, getting started with just setting up and to growing into really becoming a consultant of sports cards and to now having physical locations. So I'd love to have you just reflect on that journey and sort of tell us what the most rewarding aspect has been for you within this collectible space.
I think what I'm really proud of is it's like, you asking me for an interview to me is like, it's my pleasure. When I say I want to start a podcast, it's not just for me, it's for like, I want the future collector to kind of give them some tools, a
Hmm.
voice to kind of like guide through the process type of thing. That's the reason why I want to do it. It's not for selfish reason. But whatever it is, however people want to see it. But my goal is just whatever that I want to do, I'll do basically.
Hmm.
And that's it. So I'm proud of that, what we have built. I think the reputation, and all that stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm still a dealer, just a dealer, nothing fancy.
Yeah.
That's it. And a card owner. But you could basically be a successful at this in just, if
Yeah.
you just work hard.
Fair. Well, you've been very successful and you're extremely well respected in the industry. So I think you should be really proud of all of that hard work that you've put in and to where you've gotten because, every interaction I've had with you is always at the highest level of integrity. And if you didn't handle yourself that way, you wouldn't have the reputation you do. So big kudos to
Appreciate
you.
it. No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Zach. I've
Totally.
always picked your brain on cameras, equipment, and I followed.
Yeah. Well, anytime we've talked about it. You need tech help or whatever, you come hit me up and I'm happy to help you or just give you advice. But I think you're doing pretty good. So I know, you're busy. Our time's sort of winding down together, but I ask each one of my guests, if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring collectors or entrepreneurs, what would that be?
Collect what you love. Always follow your gut. Don't listen, you do your research. I'm not
Yeah,
saying don't listen to anyone. Obviously, you have to listen to the expert, but in the end, you decide, because in the end, it's your money. It's
yeah,
yeah.
totally. I like that. I
Mhm.
love that. I think it is important too, because I think a lot of times people get scared to think on their own, right? And
Yep.
and like you said, there's nothing wrong with listening to the experts and getting opinions and stuff, but if you have a real strong feeling about some piece or some trend or some, collectible vertical, right? Like whether it be
Mhm.
cards or it's type 1 photos or,
Yep.
figures and toys like you have behind you and stuff like that, like go with your gut, and that's important, and I
Yep.
think that goes with collecting what you love as well.
Yeah. It's better to lead than to follow. That's my always my thing too. So
100%. That is definitely great advice.
Mhm.
So, hey, is there any sort of events or something exciting upcoming that you want to share with our audience before I let you go?
My next show is this I think Philly show this coming weekend, and then my next big show that I'm trying to prepare for is Orlando Fanatics, so
Cool.
November. But there's a couple of smaller shows, and then that's pretty much it.
Okay, cool. And then
Mhm.
I've got it on the screen that people
Mhm.
where they can find you. But for those listening, do you want to tell them where they can find you on social and your website?
At blackjadedwolf.com and Black Jaded Wolf in social media, basically.
Cool. And they can
Mhm.
obviously find out information about your store, submissions, sort of everything is all
Yep,
on those.
everything. Yeah, everything is in my LinkedIn profile and stuff like that. So. Mhm.
Awesome. 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 Well, Sharon, this has been a great conversation, and I can't thank you enough for taking time to talk with us. I'm just really proud and honored to have you on the show. You are
Thank you.
truly a woman pioneer in this space and have more than held your own. And it's really cool to see you continuing to evolve. And I'm excited to see where, these physical locations take you. So I just want to
Thank you.
wish you the best of luck and say thank you so much for taking time to come on with us.
No, thank you, Zach. It's a pleasure.
All right. Have a good one. I'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye bye. Everyone at home, thank you for taking the time to watch and or listen. I hope that you learned something new or found some inspiration. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to like, follow, subscribe, rate us, and of course, please share with your friends. This is something that I do as a passion. I want to try to bring you guys, some insightful conversations with some of the most amazing people in the hobby and collectible space, and I can't do that without your support and without continuing to spread that word. So, if you don't mind doing that, I would really appreciate it if you like the show. And remember, keep collecting, keep hustling, and we'll see you next week on Hobby Hustle, where business passion and collecting collide. Thank you so much.
Hobby Hustle is brought to you by Collector Creative. If you're a collectible brand or company looking for help with marketing, branding, design, or development, head over to collectorcreative.com and drop Zach a line. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at collector_creative. And be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Hobby Hustle, where collecting passion and business collide.